Welcome to the Baseball Insiders. I am Adam Weinrib, joined as always by Fansided's MLB Insider Robert Murray. Jack Flaherty breaks his own scoop. He's back to the Detroit Tigers. Luka Doncic did not get that same courtesy. He got his scoop broken by Shams. Everybody thought it was a lie. Then he tweeted, "This is real," and everyone was like, "That's what a lying guy would say." But nope, the NBA took the headlines this weekend. Sorry to Jack Flaherty. He struggled to capture the attention of the general public in the same way that the Luka Anthony Davis trade did. But man, we will talk about that just because what an absurd moment in news breaking, in the transaction wire, it helped us all realize that, hey, no matter what absurd trade you see online and you're tempted to say, well, that's ridiculous, that would absolutely never happen, and whoever pitched this is a moron. Apparently, those can occur. So keep believe in your dreams, everybody, when you're pitching trades. But we've got Jack Flaherty done. Alex Bregman repercussions to the Flaherty deal. Pete Alonso still looking for a home, though it maybe seems like he's going to head back to the same place he's always been. And here to break it all down, along with your questions, is Fansided's MLB Insider Robert Murray. Robert, how you doing, man?
I'm great. We can add another one to the docket. Colby Allard going to the Cleveland Guardians. That is something that just occurred. So there we go. So I don't know if that tops Shams' tweet by any means, but it's some sort of news. But I will say I know what it's like getting a big scoop. I've never had one that big, but the biggest one I've ever gotten was Fernando Tatis's extension, and that I remember tweeting that, and I was shaking like a leaf. So I can't even imagine what Shams was like in that moment. So good job to him. But absolute madness going on in sports right now. In terms of that trade, Jack Flaherty breaking his own news. We got all sorts of different stuff going on around the league. So hopefully we'll have enough time to break it down today, which guess what? We will. I'm excited to do it. Adam Weinrib, how are we doing today?
Doing well. Yeah, we will have the time. We will be back. You'll see us again here Wednesday, 1 o'clock Eastern, Friday, 3:30 Eastern. Again, the video team, Joanne, our producer, is at the Super Bowl. A lot of quality folks down at the big game. Go Birds, I guess. But yeah, I am producing today's show. Thank you for joining us. Hit me with your questions. I'll see them in the comment section. I'll put them on the screen. We will talk about it. But if you want to get your questions priority responded to, join us in the Discord at the All-Star level. That's where you get the priority response. At the Rumor Mill tier, that's where you just chat with Robert and I between shows. The private Q&As go in the All-Star. That's also what gets you priority access to this particular chat. I also want to mention the Moonshot, which you should definitely subscribe to. That is Fansided's weekly baseball email newsletter, where the MLB team, including Robert Murray, myself, and a lot of other folks you may be familiar with, break down all the biggest stories of the big leagues with humor, insight, and behind-the-scenes info. Additionally, the Baseball Insiders feed is live on fansided.com. So if you want more baseball writing from Robert, from me, going a little in-depth and personality-driven here, the Fansided MLB team, the staff writers are all contributing. Fun place to be. Just head to fansided.com/baseball insiders for more from Robert and me, and a continuation of the show in text form. It's like a typed-out version of the show. That's what I call written content. Well, let's start with Jack. Let's start with baseball news before we dip a little bit into the wildness of the weekend. Jack Flaherty, Tarek Skubal said at the BBWAA dinner, basically that, hey, if there's one guy I want to get the ball in a big game and it's not me, I want it to be Jack Flaherty. Obviously very popular in that clubhouse. It's hard to say he was part of the Tigers playoff push because that really ignited after he left, but he put them in position with an all-star first half to trade him for some real assets like Tyron Lorenzo at the deadline. Then they were close enough to 500 that they were able to make a run after he departed, went to the Dodgers, got a ring, but it was clear he left a good impression on that Tigers clubhouse. They were comfortable enough with him to be able to come to some sort of agreement, and come to an agreement they did. It's short-term. It's not necessarily guaranteed to last beyond this year. His velocity was a little bit up and down last year. There were some medical concerns that sent him to LA rather than to the Bronx at last year's deadline, if we're to believe that. But at the end of the day, Flaherty controls his narrative. He announced it himself with some Isaiah Thomas photos mixed in for goodwill. And he is now a Detroit Tiger, a team that has had an interesting offseason and may or may not be still angling for more. I guess, what can you tell us about the Flaherty deal and the ramifications?
Yeah, the Tigers always made sense for Flaherty, and they've been poking around on a bunch of different names, whether it's been Alex Bregman, Flaherty, of course, bullpen guys, just you name it. Like the Tigers, they've been poking around on a bunch of different things here. And Flaherty was a player that, even dating back to last year's trade deadline, it wasn't a guarantee that they were going to move him. They really liked Flaherty, and they valued him, and they've had success bringing guys in on short-term contracts. They did it with Michael Lorenzen before they ended up trading him to the Philadelphia Phillies, and Lorenzen was very good for them in the first half of that season. Flaherty was very good for them last year too in the first half. Then they traded him to LA, and he continued to do really well there. And Flaherty was trying to get a long-term contract this offseason, obviously was not getting it. And when it came down to finding a team for a short-term contract, obviously he's got that familiarity with Detroit. He really liked it there. That was an opportunity for him that allowed him the chance to make a lot of money in 2025, but also then have the chance to go back into free agency. And if you look at it from the Tigers' perspective, it makes a ton of sense. It's no real long-term risk here. Gets Flaherty in there for 2025. Who knows? Maybe it entices Alex Bregman to come over and try to come to Detroit. We'll see there. We'll have more insight here in a little bit on that. But I thought it was a really smart move for Detroit. They had money to spend, and they spent it wisely on Flaherty, and they might not be done.
That's what everyone is asking these days, because Alex Cobb, Gleyber Torres, Jack Flaherty, Tommy Kahnle, it's an interesting offseason. It's certainly the kind of offseason it's not necessarily an all-in offseason. You know, it's not like, hey, we were in the ALCS last year, we know we're one piece away. But it was definitely an acknowledgement of, hey, this team may have surprised a lot of people last year. I don't think a lot of folks believe that certainly not when they were below 500 and you know, flirting with trading and selling people off the deadline. But an acknowledgement that, hey, you know, AJ Hinch and the infrastructure is in place. Scott Harris is aware that this project is getting closer to completion. Yeah. Colt Keith has graduated. You know, Spencer Torkelson may or may not be falling out of favor, but Trey Sweeney, you know, Lorenzo, Max Clark, Job, McGonigal, tons of rave reviews. Jace Young. I mean, a lot. Their farm system got praised similarly to the way that the Red Sox farm system has gotten praised this offseason. In a lot of these top 100 and top farm system trackers, they've got Job and McGonigal and Clark in like the top 10, if you know, maybe the top 20. But yeah, Torres. It's supplementary pieces, you know, Flaherty, familiarity, Torres, just a 1-year commitment. Kahnle, you know, you can always add to the bullpen. They're missing that big bopper or high impact addition. And we know they've been interested in Alex Bregman. You, of course, have people in the wake of the Flaherty deal drawing exact opposite conclusions. You've got people being like, well, that's got to take him out on Bregman. And you've got people being like, wow, that makes it more enticing for Bregman. Who knows? I'm not sitting here being like, I can pick one or the other. But in terms of the Alex Bregman market, are they out? Are they less likely to break that stalemate? More likely to move closer to the midpoint? Or what are we thinking?
I was of the belief, okay, so after Flaherty gets announced yesterday, my first reaction was, okay, that probably takes them out on Bregman. Not the case. They remain in on Alex Bregman. They have interest there. Does not mean a deal is going to get done by any means, but I'm convinced that the Tigers have a shot here. And really, if you look at the rest of the market, I mean, how can't they? You look at it, you have the Red Sox, who have just been kind of sitting still. They haven't made any real progress here on Bregman. The Cubs have been connected a lot more in recent weeks, and we even saw Bruce Levine in Chicago mention that they're trying there. So I guess the Cubs shouldn't be discounted by any means. But there's been no other strong competition for Bregman services. And we've even saw Sam Kennedy make a really bizarre comment today.
I was going to say, yeah.
I'm glad this RG guy put it in the comments because I was about to go dig it up. But Sam Kennedy said, I'm not allowed to talk about any specific free agent negotiations or anything, but given that he's unsigned, I think that speaks for itself. My initial reaction, what the hell does that mean? I have no idea.
Sam Kennedy with the rare, it speaks for itself after a bunch of words that undoubtedly don't speak for themselves. What are you referring to?
No, this reminds me of Jerry Jones's comments after he hired Schottenheimer as their head coach. I can't remember his exact words, but it was just like word salad. It made no sense whatsoever.
Do you mean it's not just going to be celebrations and glory holes, which he did say?
That, and there was another one too. It's about he's no longer known as Brian. He's now known as the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys. Like, come on, like
He's
what
still
the
Brian.
heck? Maybe the key to being an owner or being like a leader here is like having just word salad. I have no idea, but like for me, the Red Sox, everybody and their mothers was writing that they were signaling that they were going to spend this offseason. If they don't go out and get Bregman or anyone like that, I mean, I like the moves that they've made. Getting what they got, we got Garrett Crochet. They got another starting pitcher. I'm struggling.
Bueller, who I like a lot, on a 1 year, and Patrick Sandoval too, maybe for the second half. Not bad, but
no, like it's good, but like don't stop there. Like go out and do more. And the fact that they're giving out that kind of word salad makes absolutely no sense to me. And they should not stop where they're at now. I mean, I've mentioned that they want to add to the bullpen, but they need to do more than adding to the bullpen. They need to add to that lineup. I can go on a 25-minute rant about that. I'm not going to, but I've made my point clear. The Red Sox need to go out and make a splash in the lineup. They haven't done so yet, but they have a prime opportunity with Bregman just sitting there, and they haven't. So,
yeah,
not good. But I think the Tigers, they do have a chance here for Bregman for sure.
Yeah, the Red Sox go ahead and make these pitching additions very good. We like it, but they lose Tyler O'Neill's 31 homers. The prospects are going. Campbell is going to factor in. Roman Anthony is going to factor in, but these are young prospects. These are not necessarily experienced, weathered prospects. So it would be nice to have a guy like Bregman to be part of the bridge to maybe bring those guys in as the year goes on or into 2026.
Agreed. And we even saw it last year when Jackson Holiday was this can't miss number one prospect debuting, and he struggled initially right out of the gate. And you don't want to put too much on these young guys too quickly. Like Holiday's going to figure it out. He'll be okay. But putting too much on these guys' plates too early, that's a dangerous game to play. And as far as also, good question here from Doc. Is it Detroit, Cubs, Red Sox for Bregman? Are the Jays out? I don't know if the Jays are out. I honestly I have not heard that much as far as the Jays' interest goes in Bregman, but it's a fair question. I don't know. But I've heard them connected to Alonso, Verdugo. I heard them connected to Scherzer for a while. But they've been poking around at a bunch of different names, but Bregman, at least as far as my end goes, I have not heard much there. So maybe I'm missing something, but I don't know.
The longer it goes, the more confusing it gets. I've been waiting for the Phillies to hop in on Bregman for like 3 months, and here we are, pitchers and catchers report next week. So who knows? But hey, got to come to a conclusion sooner than later here. And speaking of got to come to a conclusion, Pete Alonso, I don't want to give the Mets their flowers here on this brilliant pivot back to Pete Alonso, because if you were watching the Baseball Insiders, you know that even when the Mets divorced Pete Alonso and said last and final offer, take it or leave it, it's $70 million, and oh, what a disgrace. I can't believe that this proud franchise is taking their slugging first baseman all the way to the wall on this one. Robert said, I don't agree that the Mets are out on Pete Alonso. I do not buy this for 1 second. And I was like, that's probably true. The other landing spots are the Angels. We never confirmed that they even met. The Blue Jays, where Andy Martino said the deal was at the 10-yard line, and we're on 2 weeks of that deal being at the 10-yard line. They're calling timeout. It must be the Tushma situation where people are jumping over the line, just, flagging encroachment or whatever. We can't get that any closer. And now all of a sudden the Mets pivot, which looked a lot like just supplementary, like AJ Minter and Jesse Winker. Good players, but players you'd sign alongside Pete Alonso if you're a bajillionaire like Steve Cohen. And then all of a sudden, underdog story. Here come the Mets on Pete Alonso again. Pete Alonso has always wanted to go to the Mets. This feels like a natural fit. It also doesn't feel like, I don't understand why this is the narrative we're selling. It took longer to get there than it should have, but I'm about to say, hey, it does feel like the Mets and Pete Alonso are kind of an inevitability at this point. I'm curious what you think here.
I agree with the fact that the Mets have never or should have never been ruled out here with Pete Alonso. I mean, he's meant so much to that franchise, and it just all the way around. it's made so much sense. And if you look at his market, it seems like it's pretty limited. We've seen the Mets connected. We've seen the Blue Jays connected. We've seen, some other teams connected here, but there's been no real teams that I've considered to be, besides those two teams that we listed, like to be a real threat here for Alonso. And for me, it reeks of eventually us hearing about a mystery team. I've not heard anything about a mystery team. I want to make that clear. But it feels ripe that this will be the one free agent where we have a mystery team pop up at the last second. So we'll see if that ultimately does happen. But Alonso makes so much sense for the Mets. They still have a need there. They've talked about moving some guys from the other side of the infield over to first base to replace Alonso in case he doesn't ultimately return. But the fact he's still lingering on the market, you can take that for whatever it's worth. But as long as he's lingering on there, I am not going to roll the Mets up by any means. I don't know of anything close, but one thing I do know is that no deal with Toronto has ever been on the 10-yard line. It's never been in the advanced stage. Nothing has been close, which is unfortunate. I feel bad for Toronto fans in that case because that got their hopes up. At least they got Scherzer. I'm not discounting them on Alonso at all. I want to make that clear too. But a reunion with the Mets, to me, in my eyes, just makes so much sense for both sides that I could see that eventually being the outcome here.
Yeah, they got gassed up on Alonso and Bregman, but they do get Santander, they do get Scherzer, they do get Jeff Hoffman. If this is the end of the offseason, not sure they did enough, but they certainly moved the needle forward in the right direction.
Absolutely. And Laura Lee, I get that sentiment by you that Alonso should go back to the Mets, that you're tired of the games. It takes two to tango here. Like, Alonso wants what he believes he deserves, and the Mets are not offering what he believes he deserves. And we've seen the reports indicating what the Mets have offered. And if you're asking for my opinion on that, it was not indicative of his worth in free agency. He deserves more. I don't blame him for holding out for more, but for both sides, it's been a very challenging negotiation. We saw Steve Cohen speak pretty openly about those negotiations and how difficult they've been. Saying that it's been tougher than the Juan Soto negotiation says a lot to me, especially when you're dealing with the same agent here. But yeah, it's not that simple. There's a lot that goes on in a negotiation here when we're talking around like $100 million. It's going to end up, I don't know what it's going to end up being at, but it's going to be a lot of money, and those are always complicated.
And there are Pete Alonso fits, like MLB Deadline News notes here, that have never gotten involved. Twins are a good fit. Mariners we've yelled about on so many shows, but these teams don't feel like participating. Yeah, Pittsburgh Pirates, not a bad call. Spencer Horwitz may be a platoon bat. Good job snagging him, but we don't really know what that is. You can't tell me Pete Alonso isn't a surer thing right now. So, yeah, clock's ticking. Spring training soon. Pitchers and catchers report next week. Luckily, Alonso, neither a pitcher nor a catcher, got a little bit of extra time. But hey, like Laura said, getting a little frustrated waiting, and we will update everyone when we know. And hey, look, I don't mind baseball and the schedule of things. Some people might prefer the way the NBA operates. It has been a while since we have just been able to be as genuinely shocked as we were this weekend when Luka Doncic for Anthony Davis and spare parts goes down. And only one draft pick, a 2029 draft pick. And I say this as a fan of a team that just traded 5 draft picks for Mikal Bridges in a trade that I like. I still think that Knicks trade is good. But what are we doing here? Anthony Davis, Hall of Fame level talent. Max Christie, fine, sure, interesting. But Luka Doncic is someone that no one even knew was available. People have been trying to come up with MLB comps for this. It's not possible. It's like if the Yankees traded Juan Soto last June in the middle of his walk year. Or, yeah, think of the best player. It's just like if the best player got traded. If the Royals didn't want to pay Bobby Witt Jr. because he was having a little bit too much frozen custard and riblets or whatever. Like, none of this makes any sense. So I'm curious your immediate reaction, but also reaction from the baseball world. Like, did you hear from anybody on this? Are baseball executives as shocked as NBA executives and teams are? Because every comment that comes out from the basketball world is, this is from people who are usually measured and are at least giving things a chance. They're like, this is insane. I don't understand this at all. No one has ever done anything like this. I'm going to go sit in a hot tub for 6 hours. Like, no one has rational thoughts. I'm curious if you run into any analysis of this deal.
No, So full disclosure, Saturday night, I went to bed very early. And all of a sudden I woke up and I got a text from a buddy of mine about this Lakers trade. I'm like, what the heck are these? What's he talking about here? And then I go to Twitter and I see it's Luka going to the Lakers and Anthony Davis going to Dallas. And all of a sudden I look at the rest of my texts and I have a bunch of different texts from different baseball executives. And they're like, when I woke up and was finally like coherent, I asked him for some comps on like what a potential, like what that could look like in terms of baseball terms. And I know it's one of my least favorite things about Twitter. Like, explain this in baseball terms, like shut up. But in this case, I actually did it. The first one I got was Bobby Witt Jr. From Mike Trout, which I thought that was kind of an interesting one. The next one I got, and even this person admitted it's not like the perfect example because this wouldn't really be fair to Anthony Davis in this case. But it would be Fernando Tatis Jr. for Trevor Story. Again, not necessarily fair to Anthony Davis in that case. But then I had a different executive because I asked him, I'm like, have you ever seen anything like this before? And his text said, in a weird way, I understand it because it becomes a complete shit show if you actually try to make a guy like that available and create more of a market. But then, yeah, you can end up doing something really strange like this. It's just overall, I don't think anybody has really seen anything quite like this in sports. It's been pretty crazy. But yeah, I thought it was fake. The fact that Shams broke that and got that full deal, I mean, that's a scoop of a lifetime. I mean, he's never going to forget that. But yeah, that's now I have a new goal. I want to break the baseball equivalent of that whenever that time comes. I am going to be gunning for it.
I don't want that pressure. That would terrify me. And that's why some people are built different, like Robert Murray, and some people are built meek, like Adam Weinrib. We just hang out on the sidelines and talk about it. But yeah, I stared at that. I was like, Shams has to have two-factor authentication on, right? Like, he can't be hacked that easily. There's no way that somebody just got in there. But then when he says, like, this is real, my obvious impulse is to be like, okay, it seems less real now than it was a couple of minutes ago, because I don't know, that's what a hacker would say. But, this is not the first time in history that someone has rolled out the red carpet for the Los Angeles Lakers to get better. Not surprising in the least that generational talent, this is what happened with Kareem. This is what happened with Wilt Chamberlain. Like, this is just what happens. Generational talents from other franchises end up on the Los Angeles Lakers. That's how the Celtics were built too. They got Jason Tatum for free because the Nets took on all of their old man deals for Kevin Garnett and Paul Pierce. Like, the greatest franchises in the NBA stay good because stuff like this happens. So I'm not shocked that the Lakers benefited, but my jaw is on the floor that this is how it happened this time. And I don't know, Trevor Story, that's not bad. Like, I almost want to go Giancarlo Stanton, like someone who we know the elite talent is still in there. And if you want to be, if you want to win now and you trade for Giancarlo Stanton, you can show someone last year's playoffs and be like, look at that. He hit 480 with like 7 homers and went to the World Series. But everybody knows he might be playing 84 games next year. He may never play a full season again. That's kind of what Anthony Davis feels like to me.
No, absolutely. And I don't know if we're going to ever see a trade like this again. Because, the thing about Twitter is like everything gets out, especially if it's getting closer, if a player of that caliber is like being made available in trade talks. But genuinely insane, dude. I don't know if we're ever going to see anything like that in baseball, which that could make my job a little bit easier. There's been plenty of sleepless nights already, but just total madness. And I'm excited for the next big thing to break in baseball. I don't know when that'll eventually be. I know I got some stuff working behind the scenes over here, so we'll see. But nothing of the Luka Doncic caliber at all. But we're trying.
Yeah, it's the kind of stuff that used to happen when GMs were just drunk in the 60s and 70s, and there was no Twitter to judge them, and sports writers were not writing critical columns because they were also drunk in the same room. It was wild to watch that unfold. We appreciate everybody joining us. Hopefully when we do break the equivalent, we will do it on this show. Definitely feel good to be able to do that. Someone telling us, let's get back to baseball. Look, we would love if there was more baseball. We will, in fact, get back to a little bit of baseball. Anything in the notebook before we sign off for the day, before we head back into the rest of the week? We'll be back again Wednesday afternoon at 1 o'clock. Do you think we're going to get any movement between now and Wednesday afternoon? There are so many relievers still on the board.
There's a lot of relievers remaining on the board here, and I know of certain things picking up behind the scenes here. So stay tuned for that. But one thing I can tell you is that after Jack Flaherty ended up signing with the Detroit Tigers yesterday, I would expect some movement here on the starting pitching front. And one of the best remaining arms is Nick Pivetta. And last year, he ended up finishing 9th in strikeout to walk ratio, or strikeout to walk percentage, I should say. And I do know that pitchers with a strikeout percentage of 28.5 or higher in his age 30 and 31 seasons in baseball history include Nick Pivetta, Garrett Cole, Jacob deGrom, Randy Johnson, and Max Scherzer. So as far as Pivetta's market goes, there are many teams in. It's wide-ranging interest. I don't know of anything imminent here, but I would absolutely expect some movement on the starting pitching front this week and going forward now that Flaherty's off the board.
Yes, Nick Pivetta, the Red Sox gambit to give him a qualifying offer and then not bring him back. And they were like, wow, this is amazing. We read the market perfectly, like based on the pitchers who didn't get qualifying offers. You never get that draft pick if he never signs anywhere. It just goes off into retirement and goes off to a cattle ranch. So Nick Pivetta will sign presumably relatively soon. And the market is finally leading in that direction. One question before we go as well. Any movement in the catching market from Brody Hastings with just over a week until camps open? I'm not actually certain who is still available in the catch.
We got James McCann. We got Yasmani Grandal. We've got a couple of different guys. I checked on Grandal last week and was told no movement. And I kind of got the same feeling on James McCann. So it could be a little bit of a wait. Who knows? Maybe Yasmani Grandal is waiting to the Super Bowl to sign again. I remember getting that text last year as I was watching the Super Bowl that Grandal was going to the Pirates. And that was kind of crazy, but yeah, I don't know of anything imminent there with either of those guys. Drew, there is no Padres news. No, there's no Padres news here. So that's what I've got for you.
Yan Gomes still unsigned, I believe, after hitting 154 last year. So look, there's always hope. You never know. Thank you for joining us, everyone. I see comments saying that the Kansas City Chiefs are going to win the Super Bowl. I disagree. I do not think that they will. But hey, we'll see. Up for grabs. We'll probably have a more detailed Super Bowl prediction on Friday, at which point people will tell us to get back to baseball, and then we will. We'll ultimately get back to baseball.
We will. But Justin, you're blocked for saying that the Chiefs are going to end up winning the Super Bowl. Mm-hmm. So that you're cooked. You're the new Zanola. You're the new Tubby of the comment section here.
I don't see it. We'll see. But hey, if the Chiefs bottle up Saquon Barkley for the first time all year, they'll have my respect. But I don't think that's going to go down that way. Either way, we'll see you 2 more times before the Super Bowl, Wednesday and Friday afternoon. We'll get a little bit more trenchant in our analysis before the big game rolls around. Until then, thanks everybody for joining us today. Head to the Discord if you have further questions that you come up between shows that you want answered. We'd love to see you there. Again, fansided.com/baseball-insiders for the Baseball Insiders feed. More written content up there coming out every day. Thank you for joining us all. And most of all, thank you, Robert Murray, for joining us. We're going to get that Luka scoop someday. I know it's going to happen.
I hope so. I'm going to work my ass off for it. I can promise you that. But I appreciate you, Adam. Everyone in the comments, I appreciate you. Even though she's not here today, Joanne, our lovely producer, we all appreciate you. See everyone back here on Wednesday for our regular scheduled programming, and I cannot wait. So let's do it.
Yep, raise a glass. Let's go. We'll see everybody back here on Wednesday afternoon. Joanne and company, enjoy the Super Bowl. Until Wednesday's show, we will be in the Discord. We will be online. Take care, everybody. We'll see you back here Wednesday.